Welcome back to the Game or Die podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ryan Moore, and today I'm going to be talking about the few games that I've been playing over the course of the last month and a half or so since I last did this podcast. With work and travel and just being generally busy with life and stuff like that, I haven't had time to play too many games, but I did get through our Game of the Month Club game for February, and so I want to talk about that first. In the last episode, I was talking about my Discord server. We were originally built off of the fact that we were the thread in NeoGAF dedicated to Giant Bomb because we all loved Giant Bomb back then. And unfortunately, over the years, Giant Bomb has just turned into this weird website that is not about video games whatsoever. Most of the staff that we all grew to love and enjoy watching is left. All the new people even kind of started falling away, and the website is just weird at this point. So everyone started to kind of get pretty negative on the forum, and some people took it too far and started being really gross and mean and just downright nasty. And I believe that's what started the thread nuking and stuff like that, but everyone was wanting to talk about Giant Bomb still, and every time someone asked, like, why can't we talk about Giant Bomb, why was thread nuked, they would get banned. And so I started a Discord server, and I just called it like NeoGAF Giant Bomb banned thread. Something stupid just to kind of get everything going, because that was at the time last year when I was moving across the country too. And so I just kind of threw something together. And over the course of the last year, we've built a little fun community, and I've been talking to these guys on this Discord server, and I talk to them every day, and it's really fun. They suggest games, I suggest games, we all play games and stuff. And so earlier this year, we started a Game of the Month Club, and in January, it was Skate 2, and I talked about that all on the previous podcast episode. And then for February, there was a suggestion for a Plague Tale, Innocence, which is kind of a crappy name. It's a pretty crappy name, but the game itself is freaking rad. I could not believe how much I enjoyed this game, and my wife actually loved watching it too. It turned into something that we would sit down every night and play a little bit through, and it's several hours long. It's not a short game by any standard, and it's really enjoyable. So that's what I'm going to be talking about this episode, is a Plague Tale, Innocence, and then also a few other games throughout the course of February and March. So let's get right into A Plague Tale. A Plague Tale is a story about a brother and sister who have to fight, their way through the land, because at the start of the game, you play as this girl, and she's like 15, 16 years old, something like that, and she's out hunting with her father, and they got the family dog going. What's really cool about this game is it's set in 1400 France, and it is just dripping with atmosphere, and I love period pieces. I love those types of movies and games where they teleport you back into a different era and a different time era. So I loved playing through this game, because when you're walking through all the cities and stuff, and I'll get into it in just a little bit, you just get a feel of, hey, I'm time traveling almost, and it is really, really cool. So you play as this girl, and you're out hunting with your father and family dog, and the dog wanders off, and you go run to it. It gets taken by this weird creature, and you have no idea what happened to the dog, and you're just super upset. Your dog just died, and your dad says, come on, let's go back home. And so you have to go break the news to your mom that the dog died, and you're super upset. Your mom is, upstairs in the castle that you live in. You're some wealthy landowners and family of 1400 France, and you go up to your mom, and you're like, hey, the dog died and I'm super upset, and your mom's kind of not really paying attention. She's working on some like weird concoction for your brother, who is apparently really, really sick. And you don't get to see him. He's kind of been quarantined off from the rest of the family. You very rarely get to talk to him, play with him, because your mother is trying to cure him. She's like an alchemist. It's really weird. So you're super upset, and you just hear this like commotion going on outside, and your mom says, "Go, run, hide." And these knights come knocking on your door for your family, and they start killing everyone. And so you have to take your little brother and run across and hide from these people and get away. And that's basically like a lot of the game is running and stealth and trying to get away from the people who are hunting you and your family down. And it is just incredible the way that this game not only does stealth mechanics, because it's actually pretty fun and terrifying, but it also makes you feel for these characters in a way that not a lot of whole games do. This game actually makes you care about these characters. The voice acting, I believe, is really, really good. I know some people said that the voice acting is terrible. I don't agree with that at all. I think it was fantastic. And then it also really wants you to just immerse yourself in the game world. Take a look at how gross and disgusting the atmosphere of this game really truly is. It's terrifying. And if you put yourself in the mindset of these littler kids, it is just like so overwhelming that they're having to deal with all this stuff, like their mom dying in front of them running away from these captors who have no idea why they're trying to capture them. And it is just so cool. I wanted to talk about a couple different parts of why this game just called out to me in a way. When the game originally was announced, I think it was at E3 in 2019, the game looked really interesting right from the get-go. It did look like it was kind of an escort mission type of game, like Ico or Eco, whatever you want to call it, or any of those types of games, but it's not really that way. There are some parts to it, but for the most part, you are on your own, and your brother, who you're trying to take care of, kind of does his own thing, and when you're traveling together, it's not really that difficult of a gameplay challenge, but it's the story that really, really grabbed me. And what this game does is it introduces this mechanic with rats. Like, you have thousands and thousands of rats, like all tangled and gnarled together, and you have to wade your way across these areas where it is just rat infested, and it is so gross and interesting at the same time to watch. The way that the rats move and flow, almost like water in a way. It's really cool. And that's what grabbed me of the trailer. It looked like, oh man, there's like this horde of rats that you have to deal with. That looks pretty cool. And then I just kind of forgot about it. But because of our Couch Money Discord server, we all discussed it and we said, all right, let's play it because it's on Game Pass. That was one of the things I think with January's game, Skate 2. Everyone was like, well, we don't have Skate 2. And so I kind of bundled the PS3 emulator and that game together for the server so everyone could play. But it's much easier to just say, hey, click on this game if you've got Game Pass and install it and start playing it. That's way easier for everyone. So I liked the fact that we did that. So you just download the game and you start playing. And it's just like, ooh, this is interesting. This looks really good. And it's got a really good story. It's intriguing. It keeps you wanting to play more and more and more and more as time progresses. Like, it's instantly satisfying in a way to be able to start playing, pick up and start playing that game, as opposed to going, oh, well, all right, I'm not really interested in this. I guess I got to pick this up. Okay, what is the world? Why is the world the way it is and stuff like that? You kind of get it from the get-go. You start picking up the controller and playing, and you understand the mechanics. You understand that this is a linear story-based game, so you're kind of just barreling through a story, and you just got to maneuver the very light puzzles that they have and stuff like that. And it was just really satisfying to play through that whole game. The atmosphere is what kept me going more than anything else, I think. I am a big fan of the level design and atmosphere and aesthetic and just everything about video games, the way they look and the way that these game designers can tell a story and make you feel like you're inhabiting that world at that given time. That's what I love about video games. It's not the only thing I love, obviously, but it is a big chunk of why I love video games. So what I did is it made me realize, oh, this is both gross because of all the rats and everything like that, but also just beautiful architecture and recreating what you think like 14th century France would look like. Yeah, I believe they hit the nail on the head on that one. So it was really cool. And then there are these parts of the game where you're walking through this like battlefield with trebuchets and just hundreds and thousands of dead soldier bodies, and the characters are commenting on it. And it's like early in the morning, late at night. I can't really remember exactly what time it is in the game, but the sky is like dark blue / gray. You've got mist rolling in, and the characters have to walk across this battlefield that is just dead silent with a little bit of wind howling and stuff like that. And the characters have to cross over these dead bodies. And, you know, you think that they would go for like the obvious jump scare of walking across this deadly silent graveyard almost and then having a jump scare. But they didn't do that. They just, you hear like the cloth rubbing against the dead people and kind of crunching bones and stuff. And it is just, oh man, it is just, like I said, dripping with atmosphere. It is so interesting to play through. There's another part where you play as the brother, and I really like that. You play as the main girl the entire time, but you play as the brother Hugo in some areas too, and you're walking through this cathedral that is inhabited by all the soldiers that are trying to get you, but you hear that your mother is alive and blah blah blah, and so you go through this castle or this cathedral, this church. That is just all these armed guards walking in almost in a stealth-like fashion, like a Metal Gear Solid or something like that. And you're walking through, and you get to the dungeon area, like this makeshift dungeon area. And you've got this part with this room filled with people in stocks. If you don't know what stocks are, they're the kind of like clamps. I don't know why I think of this, but Hunchback of Notre Dame, the guy who's like, I'm free, and then falls and gets captured again. Those are stocks where it clamps down on the head and arms and you can't really move. And so you got these people in stocks, this room filled with people in stocks, probably like 15 to 20 people in stocks. And their hands are turned up and their wrists are all slit. And the blood is just dripping down, and the floor is not covered in blood because it's grates, and all the blood is dripping down to the next level. And you find out a little bit later on the blood is actually dripping down into these vats that are being held for the rats and stuff like that. It is just wild and gross and disgusting and eerie and creepy, and oh, it is just so cool. I loved this whole game from front to back. It was really fun because there haven't been a lot of games that I've been playing that my wife has really enjoyed lately. Her and I love playing through games, and we'll pass the controller back and forth every once in a while. But for the most part, she really likes watching me play a lot of games. And something like Skate, she did not like watching. She doesn't like watching Mortal Kombat. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like we both watched that E3 press conference when this game was announced, and we said, ooh, that game looks really interesting. And I'm really glad we got to play it together. And it was one of those things where we'd sit down, we have dinner, and then we go, what do you want to do? Let's play a Plague Tale. And so we started playing a Plague Tale, and we play for an hour or two at a time every night after dinner. And it was just so much fun to be able to go through that story with her, play through that game, also talk about it on the Discord as well. It is just a really incredible game. And one of my favorite things is there is a sequel coming later this year. And it's also going to be on Game Pass. So I am stoked beyond belief to be able to play through the next game after recently playing through the first game. Like, I love when that type of stuff happens. It would be awesome if that game was coming out like tomorrow so that I could play through it now and have less of a gap. I really like that. I did that with the God of War series. My friend James was really, really just like, dude, you gotta play God of War, and that was on PS2, and I was not a PS2 guy at all. I was an original Xbox guy, and by the time that game 2 was coming out, I still never played God of War, and so he really was just like, man, you gotta play this, you'll love it. It's got what is it? It's not Norse, that's the new one. Ancient Greek mythology. You got to play it. It's going to be awesome. And so I said, all right, fine. He let me borrow the game. I played through it. I loved it. And then, dude, like literally either or later that week or the next day or something, God of War 2 came out. And it was just like, no way. I love when that stuff happens. So I cannot wait for the new Plague Tale game. I can't remember the name of the title, but it's going to be, it's called A Plague Tale : something. This first one is A Plague Tale : Innocence. So this one's probably going to be like Revengeance or something like that. But man, it is such a really, really good game. The next game I want to talk about is something, again, that was on Game Pass, and that was a huge factor of why I wanted to play it. Came out of nowhere, came out on Game Pass, and people were like, oh, this is basically a new Simon's Quest. And I was like, Simon's Quest? Why does that sound familiar? Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Which, if you listen to those previous podcasts, some of the earlier podcasts that I did, I played through the Castlevania series. And I did talk about Castlevania 2. And from what I remember about that game from a few years ago, I kind of hated Castlevania 2. I hated it because it was so esoteric. It was so just like, I have no idea how to progress through this game. Because back then with NES games, there was this mentality of, you're going to play this game for the next 2 months straight, and you're going to figure out the stuff. And there are points in that game where to progress, you need to go and walk to the edge of an area in the game where there's a lake, and you need to press down and hold down for like 10 seconds while having something, a special inventory item equipped in your inventory, and a whirlwind will take you away and fly you away to another area. It's kind of like in Mario 3, in I think the third level, where you get to the end of the level and you jump up on that white platform and you hold down for a while, and then you'll fall behind the background of the level, go all the way past the end point, and you'll hit a special toad room and get the warp whistle. It's kind of like that, where you will never figure that out unless you already knew about it or read about it in a video game magazine like Nintendo Power. And I believe that's what why a lot of people know about that. I think it was the second issue of Nintendo Power where they talked about Castlevania 2. So there's all this stuff, on the internet and in video game magazines, but I don't play that way. I don't go look up all this stuff and then play through that. So I didn't know, and I had a really hard time until I got stuck, and I just had to keep going back to the internet and finding out what I had to do through a walkthrough. I'd figure out what I need to do and then stop reading and just continue on. Because I don't want to spoil the game for myself, but at the same time, there's not really all that much to spoil. It's a really old game, and there's not much story to Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. So I did not like that game that much. I love the Castlevania series, but like the older middle games, Rondo of Blood, the Symphony of the Night, all that type of stuff. I started off with a bad understanding of what this game was, and this game is called Infernax. I believe that's what it's called, Infernax. And it is so much like Simon's Quest. It's unbelievable, but it's all new. It's all brand new. It came out, just a few weeks ago, and I played through the entire game in a couple nights. It was really fun. It's a pretty short game, all things considered, and I was home alone for like a week while my wife was in Mexico. So she took off to Mexico with her sister to visit her family. And I got stuck at home dealing with the dogs. And so I had all day and all night for like a week straight to play video games and just work and stuff like that. And so like I'd work and then I'd just play video games like literally all the way straight through. And it was so much fun. Infernax is a NES style platformer in like the 8/16-bit. It's 16-bit, it's not 8-bit. And it is so interesting. It is so fun with playing through Plague's Tale, where it's very heavy on the story and less light on and very light on the mechanics. This is the exact opposite. This is hardcore mechanics driven, very light on the story. And I like bouncing back and forth between those two. I like having a game where it's got really good story and I don't really have to struggle through the gameplay, and I can just kind of play through it with my wife and stuff like that. And then I can also play these very, 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 intensely mechanical based video games that are just all video game mechanics. It is just a pure video game where you are trying to accomplish something and you have to do it on your own merit. And I love, bouncing back and forth between those two. So Infernax is basically you're a character who was like a Lord of the Manor type of thing. Like you're a duke, I believe. And you are in the Crusades. And so you come back from the Crusades and your hometown has been overrun by these demonic monsters for the last year. And the townsfolk are all upset and dying, and you come home and go, what's going on? And everyone's like, oh man, there's monsters. As soon as you left, monsters arrived and blah, blah, blah. You got to save us. So you go off to all the different areas of the land and fight these monsters and these bosses and, take care of business. And all it is it's Simon's Quest, man. If you don't know what Simon's Quest's main thing was, it was, it's a terrible night for a curse. So you have this day-night cycle, and during the day you have less powerful enemies, and they're a little bit easier to deal with, and you can go through and do all this stuff. And then at the night, your character isn't cursed. It's just the land that is cursed. So all the harder enemies come out at night. And what's really interesting about this game too is it does some of these like multiple playthrough type of angles where you have consequences for your actions. Right at the very beginning of the game, there's this guy who comes up to you and says, kill me, please kill me. And you're like, what? And then if you don't kill him and you spare him, he turns into this monster and attacks you. And it's like, okay, great. And then this lady comes out and goes, oh my gosh, I can't believe you killed my husband. How dare you? And then later on in the game, you meet her and if you kill her husband and she turns her back on you, she will close up her door. You can't visit her. And I believe she has a shop, or you can buy something from her, or there's a side quest to that character that gets locked away because you did the opposite choice. You have choices in this game. Few and far between. There's only a little bit, and the game is pretty short, but it is really interesting that they do this. And that's what I loved about Infernax, is like, oh, wow, there are multiple playthroughs of this little tiny game that is also pretty difficult. I personally didn't find it very, very difficult. I think I leveled up enough. I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But games where you can level up characters, the way that I min-max the game is I try to put all of my leveling up abilities into health and power, and those two things. Like, you have magic and you have all these extra things. I don't think that they really do all that much. I think it's a waste of time. You can get through the game if you just have enough health, you can take more hits, and then you have enough power so that you deal a good amount of damage. You have those two things, you don't really need anything else. That's my play style. I know a lot of other people don't have that play style. My wife is a very different video game player than I am. When we're playing stuff like Skyrim or Oblivion, she loves to sneak around. She loves to use bows and arrows and magic. I am not that type of person at all. I was like, wait, there's magic in the game? So with Infernax, like, there are different playstyles that you can do, and it is very heavily influenced by Simon's Quest, which is great because there are not a lot of games that use those influences, and this one does kind of dive a little bit. Like, at the very beginning, I was like, this is way too much like Simon's Quest. Like, as soon as the day-night cycle hits and stuff like that, I was like, this is a little bit too Simon's Questy. And like the branching level paths where you can go above ground or below ground, and there's a lake with an end where you can sit and do all this stuff. Like, it does the whole Simon's Quest thing, but it does so much more than that, and that's what I really liked about it. I beat it. I had fun with it. It was a tight little, like, 2 to 3 day game, and that was it. And I loved it. I think everyone should play that game if you like that style of old NES look, 16-bit look, or 8-bit. Again, I think it's more a 16-bit look. But you have that style of game with modern mechanics, because what I think this does way better than Simon's Quest is the way it feels. It feels so much tighter. When you push left, you instantly go left. You push up and jump, and you instantly jump. And there's no weird mechanics. There's no weird, flickering of the sprites or anything like that. Everything feels modern. It's a modern update to that style of game, and that's what I love about those types of games. I want so many more modern styles. I don't want floaty mechanics or anything like that. I want it to feel like a modern interpretation of those games. Like, if you go back and play Simon's Quest now, you're not going to have that much fun of a time, because the feeling of those games are not as tight as they are with modern games, and it's really hard to get into. I remember going back and playing those games and having a hard time with the NES games because of the way that you get knocked back and all that stuff. It is so much more enjoyable with modern, very quick responsive controls. Do that with a modern gameplay style, but taking influences from those older games. I love it. It is amazing. So I played Infernax. I played A Plague Tale. And then everyone was really like, A Plague Tale is a pretty short game. That was our February game of the month for Couch Money Discord server. And we were talking about the March game, and it was like, well, what is March going to be? What is March going to be? Everyone started talking about this game called Elden Ring, which is the next game from Software, which is a Dark Souls game. It's the next Dark Souls. And I was if you know me, I hate Dark Souls. Not because it's difficult, because it's unfairly difficult and it is punishing in a way that is not enjoyable to me. I am not a masochist. I don't like that type of just like banging my head against a problem for 4 hours straight and then finally getting through it. When I beat a really hard boss, I don't get satisfaction from it. I get frustrated because it should not have gone that way. It should have been relatively enjoyable and easy, and I don't find anything enjoyable about boss fights for the most part. Every once in a while, there is the occasional boss fight that I really do enjoy, but it's very few and far between. So everyone was talking about Elden Ring, and I was like, Elden Ring, what the heck is that? And so I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, it's a Dark Souls game. Okay, it's the next Dark Souls. There's been about 70 of them in the last decade, so this is nothing new. And then I watched a couple quick looks and reviews and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, it's an open world Dark Souls. Okay, whatever. But everyone was talking about it on the server so much that I was like, I don't know if I want to play this or not. It seems a little bit more interesting, and I really do want to be able to talk about Dark Souls a little bit more than I already can, because I've never finished one of those games. I played it for like 10 to 15 hours once, and then I played it for I played the remake or the remaster version on PC a few years later for like 10 or 15 hours, and then dropped it because I hated it so much. And then I played Neo, and I tried that, and it was basically Dark Souls, but with whatever. And there was way too many mechanics on it. It was really frustrating, and I just dropped it. So I have a good idea of what those games are, but I've never finished one. And I wanted to talk about one. I wanted to try it out because, hey, open world, that sounds a little bit more interesting. So I made the executive decision of making that our March game of the year. And at the beginning, I was kicking myself for it. Luckily, one of the users posted a coupon code for the game. For Green Man Gaming, it was $45 instead of $60. And I was like, dude, $45? All right, I'll give it a chance for $45. So I plopped my money down. I got the game, and I started it up. I streamed it, which was really fun because there was one of the users was watching me play. And so I was streaming. I was talking through the gameplay. I finished up, and I was like, you know what? I've been playing for about 3 hours, and I got to go. I got to go take care of this the dogs and do this stuff because this is still while my wife was away. And I'll come back later. And so I looked at the chat, and he was like posting like, hey, it's me from the server. What do you think about the game? And so we had like a 20 to 30 minute conversation about the game and how I kind of really hate this type of game, but I'm intrigued about some points. And I think the boss fight was unfair and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, yeah, I'll go back and play a little bit more later tonight. And so I stopped for a little bit. I had some dinner. I let the dogs out, and I came back and I played some more. And I will fully admit I was a big old baby. I was really, 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 really freaking upset with that second playthrough because I got to this part where you meet this first boss, and his name is Margit. And Margit the Omen fell, which means nothing. His name is Margit. That's all you need to know. And he's a big old boss. So this boss is right at the very get-go of the game. Within the first, like, I'd say if you just booked it, like, probably first, like, 10 minutes of the game. But playing through it, and again, with me, knowing how these games are and how I don't like them, I beat this one giant, and then went through a little bit more and did all this other extra stuff. I got to the castle where he's at, and I started fighting him, and I died over and over and over and over for literally 2.5 hours trying to beat this stupid boss. And I was so upset. I was angry. I was yelling at the game while I was streaming. I was being a big old baby, a whiner about it, and I quit out. And it's probably like maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock at night at this point. And I'm just like so frustrated and angry, and my nerves are just raw from how that game works, that I looked up how to beat this boss. I was like, I'm just going to look it up. I don't care. I know the game's brand new, but I know people have beaten this game and stuff. And I already found a couple videos of people who are like, oh, this is how you beat the boss. And I was like, okay, how do I beat the boss? And it's like level 99, has all the best weapons and stuff. I'm like, come on. But I was watching and it's like, oh yeah, it's just, dodge and attack, dodge and attack, dodge and attack. Just know and memorize the attack patterns. So I was like, I freaking hate that about these games. I don't want to sit here and memorize attack patterns where I get one-shotted. I literally die in one hit, and it takes about a minute and a half to get everything ready, prepare for the battle once you load back into the world, get there, and then die within 5 seconds. So it's just over, rinse and repeat, and it just takes forever to prepare and get to the boss fight. And then once you get to the boss fight, you die within a few seconds. And it's just that whole thing over and over again. And I was just freaking pissed off. So I started looking on forums and stuff like that and Reddit. And I was just like, everyone else is having the same problem I am. And the answer is go somewhere else. I was like, wait, what? Go somewhere else. It's an open world. And I was like, okay. So I went back to where I started at the start of the game, and I started like trying to kill other things, and I was doing a pretty good job of that and leveling up. I didn't know you leveled up in that game for probably about 10 hours or so of that game. Once I started leveling up my character with all the runes that I've been collecting and not just purchasing random crap from merchants, and also leveling up your weapons, it became much, much easier to deal with. And so I did that, and I played through, and I'm almost 70 hours into this game at this point over the course of the last like 2.5 weeks. So I really, 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 really like Elden Ring, which is a huge, huge, huge surprise for me. I did not think I was going to like a Dark Souls game. But I think this one does do a lot of little things differently that really, really help me enjoy the game. One of them is being that open world where if you get stuck on an area or a boss, you can go somewhere else. The one thing that I was pissed off about is with that boss fight, Margit, everyone says you're not supposed to be there until way later on in the game. You need levels and levels and levels and weapon upgrades on top of weapon upgrades. You shouldn't be there for the first, third of the game. I'm like, wait, what? The game starts you off in that area, and every bonfire or site of grace, as they call it, basically wants you and points you and pushes you towards that fight. So it is the game's fault because this is how these games are. They're known to be difficult. They're known for being punishing. They're known for you hitting your head against a boss for 45 minutes to a couple hours straight, and then finally somehow defeating it and moving on and progressing. So it is not my fault for doing what the game wants me to do. But this game is basically saying, no, we're changing that one rule. We don't want you to be here, even though we're pushing you towards it. It's like, wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. So I was kind of mad about that. The bosses themselves are unfun. I don't like boss fights. Like I said earlier, I hate them. And also, they are one of those things that are cheap. They are unfair in certain instances. I had this happen last night. I'm really far into the game at this point. I wouldn't say closing in on the end game, but I'm at the end game area, and I still have a lot of stuff to do and explore, but I've uncovered, I'd say, at least 85% of the map, which is huge. It is a really, really big game. It is fairly massive, and I think part of that is because of the way the map is designed. There are a lot of areas where you have to go around places. It takes forever to travel with your horse because you have like a dash button, but that dash only works for like a quarter of a second. It's more of a dodge button. And so your horse runs fairly slow, all things considered, and it is just one of those things where it just takes forever to traverse. But it is a big map. I will not say that it's not. I wanted to hate the game, but the game is actually really, really fun. But I will say there are points like last night where I hit this point where I'm like, okay, there's this optional boss fight. And because I'm so leveled up and so powerful with my weapons, I was like, I could probably take this guy. I've been fairly good at all the other bosses that I've encountered, in this area and stuff like that. So I went and I started finding this optional boss. There are these, they're not egg rolls, but they're evergolds or something like that. They're like these big circular platforms indented into the ground. You touch it and you kind of get transported to this another plane of existence where this bad guy, this mini boss, shows up. And so you can fight them, and whenever you fight like these big bosses, they drop weapons or spells or something really good. So I was like, all right, well, I'm already here. I'll just fight him. And so I started fighting him, died very quickly. I was like, okay, I can do this. Started fighting him, died very quickly. And I did that for about 20 minutes straight. And I was just mad that I could not get this guy beaten, because most of the time I can get him down to a sliver of health, and either he'll regen his health, because they are apparently humanoid NPCs that can do this, where they can regen their health. They can have a flask that you use to regen. They have one too. He only has one. So I'd have him a sliver of health, and then he would regen his health. And so I'd have to knock it all down again. But when you get him down to a certain point, they go crazy. Like, they go hardcore mode, as I like to call it, where they will just rush you and attack you, and it doesn't seem like they have any, like, they have infinite stamina, so they can hit, and they can just continually hit you over and over with these super powerful one-shot moves without blinking, without stopping for like a minute straight. If you try and go on the offensive and start attacking him, he infinite dodges. He'll dodge over and over again until your stamina is depleted. And then once your stamina is depleted, he'll go in and attack you and kill you. It is unfair. I don't know how to say that any way otherwise. It is an unfair fight. And I have these spells and potions, and I'm equipping all these things to give me the best advantage, but your character moves like molasses, which is one of my main issues with the stupid Dark Souls games. You can be well equipped or lightly equipped and have a better, faster dodge, but your attacks, depending on the weapon, if you have a heavy weapon or a weapon that uses a spell, it takes forever. And it is just annoying when you have this gap where you have to, like, you create this gap, you kind of run away from the enemy, and then you start trying to wind up your big magical swing or whatever that will deal like half damage, which is great. But then that boss just sprints towards you, and he's got this super long spear that teleports halfway across the screen from what it feels like, and then one-shots you in the middle of while you're swinging, or even at the end of your swing. You're not invincible except for a few certain times, like in your dodge. If you dodge at a certain specific frame, you can get invincibility, basically. And so you won't be damaged. Same thing with certain attacks, I guess. Like if you are doing a stealth attack, like where you reach up behind, or you get behind the guy and you stab him in the back, and it's like this long overdrawn animation, those are invincible as well as soon as you like start that animation. But man, there is just sometimes where I'm like, dude, I'm doing the thing and it is just killing me. And it's just, it freaking sucks. But what I really like about this game is that it feels a little bit more balanced than what I perceive Dark Souls as being. And I would be really interested to go play Dark Souls after playing this, now that I really understand the feeling and weight of the characters, the mechanics, and the way it's designed, where I hate games where you lose progression. And again, that's another reason why I hate Dark Souls. I hate games where you lose progression. You build up souls by defeating enemies, right? And if you don't get to a bonfire and you die, you drop all your souls. And you have to go get back to that area where you were, where you died, and regain your souls so that you don't lose them. If you die a second time without grabbing the souls that you dropped, you lose them forever. And that's where I really hate the progression stopping. It's like, well, I just spent 30 minutes going through this castle, and this happened in Elden Ring too. I went 30 minutes through this castle, and I died at this one cheap, character that was hiding behind an area that I couldn't see. I crossed a doorway, he stabbed me in the back, and one-shotted me. Well, okay. Now I got to spend, half an hour going through a whole thing over again just to get there and then hopefully not die. But because I was so scared that I had to take out every enemy so that I didn't get, killed and stabbed in the back, I have no more health. And so when I get to the area where I died before, I pick up my souls or runes, as they call it in this game, and then I die from the same guy again. And it's like this whole rinse and repeat thing, and it's just like, it's frustrating. But Elden Ring is a little bit more forgiving in that way. And then also it's like, well, the way runes work is you can purchase stuff or use those runes to level up, and those are the only two things that they're used for. And so if you lose them, there are certain areas of the game where you can kind of farm souls, and I hate grinding in games too, but throwing on a podcast, alt-tabbing out, putting on a podcast, tabbing back in, and then just kind of letting my mind wander in this one specific area where you can get over 2,000 souls every, 20 seconds or so. It's not too bad. So I really did enjoy that. And it's been something that I've been doing every once in a while where I go, okay, I need an upgrade or I need a level. I'll go to this one area or farm the souls for that upgrade and then go spend it and then continue on in my path. Oh, I need this amount of stuff to buy this, cookbook from this merchant. Okay, travel to the spot, farm the souls, fast travel back to the other spot, and then bam. Oh, okay, cool. I got the thing that I need. I can continue on. And it is this just back and forth of being able to go into different areas. That open world is infinitely more fun than, all right, here's this hallway, here's this boss. I cannot progress through the game until I beat this boss, and I'm not leveled up, so I don't know what to do. I'm just stuck. I just got to sit here and memorize it and beat my head against the wall. That is what I hate about Dark Souls. Elden Ring allows me to progress in a different path until I bump up against something else. And then I can go back to that previous path where I was stuck. And probably at that point, I can progress. And so it's just been this really interesting gameplay experience for me to play through this game and really understand why people like this series. And I totally get it. Now, I understand why people like Dark Souls. I personally still think that there are a lot of major issues, but I can accept them at this point in my life, as opposed to a few years ago where I was so hardcore against that series. My friend Andrew and I had a podcast a few years ago, back in like 2014, 2015. Yeah, 2015. In one of the episodes, we were talking about Dark Souls, and I'm sure I've told this story on the podcast before as well. But he went on and on and on about why he loves Dark Souls, but it was a lot of experiences. And I said, yeah, those are great experiences, but the game sucks. I hate the gameplay. I hate the mechanics. I hate how you move like molasses through the entire thing. I hate how you can't you can be damaged through all these things. You have stamina, but the bosses don't. They can't be damaged during their hit animations. They have full stamina 24/7 all day long every time. And I think it's a very unfair game. And him and I went back and forth on it, and unfortunately we dropped out of contact and stuff like that. But I get what he sees in those games at this point. I love that I can finally understand, okay, this is why people like Dark Souls. I get it. I understand it. Okay, moving on. So I've been playing Elden Ring. I got farther past the point of that guy last night. I was a big baby, and I started yelling, and I rage quitted, and I felt bad. My wife was all angry at me too for yelling. And it's just some of those, that game in particular is just, it's so builds up your like your nerves are raw after playing that game for a while. And so I was just like, I'm so angry. Like, this boss, this optional boss is in an area where I should not be dying over and over and over and over again. And then it gets to the point where, like, I've got all the animations down, memorized. I've got all the potions. I kill him down to this last little sliver of health where the health bar is 0, but he's not dead. And I go, okay, I just need one more hit. And I go in and try and attack, and he's just infinite dodging over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I'm like, come on, why aren't you allowing me to die? And it feels like the game just clicks into, all right, cool, I'm gonna cheat. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying the game is cheating. I'm not an insane person, but it really feels like it sometimes. There are really points in that game where it's just like, this is unfair. This is so unfair that this game just clicks into this mode where all the options are off for the boss. God mode is on for the boss, but not for me. And it really feels like it's like, what's going on behind the scenes here? What is the code really doing at this point? Because I can recreate the steps without fail every single time. And once it gets to this point where it's like, oh, there's one more hit left, it's just, no, I'm not going to allow you to hit me. You have full health. You have full stamina. You have full magic. You have buffs upon buffs upon buffs. And I'm going to one-shot you. Even though I've never done it before, I'm going to do it now. And it's just like, come on. So it is frustrating in certain areas, and I definitely do get really upset at some points in the game. But there are other points where, like, so there's Margit and Margot as another version of the character that you fight. And I did see a lot of people going, Margot is really, really tough. And I was like, oh, man, okay. And so I got to that boss, and I was like, dude, it's like 11:30 at night. I'm really not in the mood for a boss fight right now. And I just said, well, I don't really have any souls to lose. I'm just going to see what it looks like. Get the cutscene over and done with, die, respawn, and then quit out of the game and go do something else. And so I did it, and I beat him. I was like, wait, what? And that's happened a couple times where, like, I'll get to a boss, I'll beat him on the first or even second or third try, and I can get him down, and I go, okay, I got this. I just need to dodge a little bit more or create a little bit more distance. It is really fun. It is a fun game, and I kind of hate saying this, but there's almost no chance that this is not going to be on my Game of the Year list this year, unless there are 9 other games or 10 other games that are just blow me away way more than this game. This will definitely be on my list in some fashion or another. It is unbelievable how much this has grabbed me. Like every day, like I'm thinking about the game, and I don't do that a lot. I'm thinking about how am I gonna beat this area, or what's the next area, or what's the next upgrade, or maybe I'll just take a little bit of a longer lunch break and play farm some souls so that I can get a new upgrade and stuff like that. It's just really, really fun. I'm having a blast with the game for the most part. And so that has been my week for the last couple of weeks, is just playing Elden Ring. I haven't really played anything else. I kind of want to. I kind of want to finish the stinking game because I've dropped 70 hours into it. And I want to do something else with my life. I want to play more games. But I'm having a real blast. And it's kind of weird because everyone's like, oh yeah, I beat it 3 times already and I'm on my 8th character. And I'm like, I'm one and done with this game. I will never go back to it. So I want to kind of get everything done and get everything that I can out of it, because I do not see myself ever going back to this game ever again. Well, I'm just not that type of person to replay games like that over and over and over again. There are so many games that are coming out. Like, I still want to finish the first Horizon Zero Dawn because the new one came out, and I don't have a PS5, unfortunately, but when I do, I want to be able to play it, and hopefully in the next couple of months I can. So I just want to play more games. I want to be done with Elden Ring, and hopefully by the next podcast I will be, and move on. We're in the middle of the month of March, so it's not that big of a deal. Like, I still have technically a whole 2 more weeks before the end of March before we move on to our next game of the month. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm really happy, and it's gotten a lot of a really good discussion going on our Discord server. I'm going to try and drop a link to the Discord server in case anyone is listening who wants to join our little group. We started off, like I said, on NeoGAF talking about Giant Bomb, and that is still a main conversation of topic. Giant Bomb, Nextlander, Fire Escape. There are channels all for 3 of those that you can talk about, but I'm really, really digging our Game of the Month Club. And if you want to join our Game of the Month Club too, man, go ahead, do it. So I'll try and drop a link to the Discord server in the chat or in the description or whatever. Please join. You're more than welcome there. Just have fun. That's what the community is there for, is to talk about video games and video game stuff. But I think that's all that I've been playing for the last month and a half, is mainly those 3 games. And that's pretty much it. So I'll finish out this episode of the Game or Die podcast. You can always look on the website gameordie.net and look at more information about the games that I've been playing, all the reviews that I write. Really quick, I do want to talk about a movie called The Hyperions. It is a quote-unquote superhero movie that is more about family than it is about the superheroes and using their powers and stuff like that. But it is a really, really interesting movie that was shot 3 years ago before the pandemic. And it's got Carrie Elwes in it, and from Robin Hood Men in Tights and Psych and stuff like that. I love him as an actor, and he's in this, and he plays a really, really interesting character. It is very aesthetically, it is like a Wes Anderson movie. It has that same type of feel to it and style. It is a period piece that takes place in the late 60s, early 70s. No, late 70s, late 60s, mid 70s, I think. But it is a really, 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 really good, interesting movie. They do a lot of weird animation style with it too that totally shouldn't work, but it does, because it is so contradictory to what you're watching. It's like half comedy, half drama. It's really fun. It is a fun, interesting, enjoyable movie. So I highly, highly suggest watching The Hyperions. And it's got this part in it that really reminded me of the World of Color, Disney's World of Color, where you're watching him, the character, his name's Ruckus Mandelbaum, and that's Carrie's character. And he's like this professor who creates this superhero family, kind of like the Powerpuff Girls. So it's like half Powerpuff Girls, half Disney World of Color. And it's just really, really interesting, all combined in a heist movie. It's really fun. So go check it out. It just came out late last week. It came out on Friday, I think, and it's Tuesday. So it just came out a few days ago. I highly recommend it. The Hyperions, check it out. But that's going to do it for me for the Game or Die podcast, episode 55. Always, again, check out gameordie.net. And thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you next time.